What's up everyone, thank you for tuning in. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can adjust your valves on your A20. Now a couple of the things I'm going to show you may also help on other Honda engines as well. Okay, why are valve adjustments needed? Well, just like changing your oil or any other coolant or fluids out there that you need to do, or servicing belts at a certain time, valve adjusting should be on there as your part of your service list to do. However, it is a somewhat overlooked task to do just because there's a longer interval of time before it's needed to be done. Definitely refer back to your owner's manual, your service manual. Just Google it if you don't have it, or if you do have it, check it out to see how you should adjust them to the limits. I'll get into that here in a second. But this is what basically happens. Now this is specifically talking about Honda engines, especially this one, but a lot of the Honda engines across the board are pretty much somewhat the same as far as valve train goes. But be sure to check your owner's manual just to be exactly sure on what service calls for what. Especially for you guys trying to do a comparison to like Nissans and Toyotas. Now to my knowledge, it's a way different ball game as far as valve train goes between that and Honda. Excuse me. So basically what happens is after a while, as anything made by a man or machine, there tends to be wear. And for the Hondas, wear, you can definitely see wear on cams, the rocker assembly, and the valves themselves. Now when wear happens, clearance changes. Now mostly on Honda's, clearance will always tend to be looser because you'll see a lot more wear on the cam and rockers, which will give it more of a gap from where the valves meet to the seat, and which gives it more space because of looser clearance after time. Now, how could you tell by that? Well, you'll basically have a louder sounding click or tick in the engine bay. Now, at first, it may seem kind of like, if you're not aware of it at first, it may seem kind of scary because you may think, oh God, I have a rod knock or whatever, something's going on there, because it can easily be misdiagnosed to be a slight rod knock. It can be diagnosed to bearing failure, to maybe your timing belt tensioner pulley, or even maybe your water pump pulley, or anything that could resemble a click or ticking sound coming from your engine bay. Now there is ways to check to see exactly where sounds are coming from, but my experience owning two 820s, I have never heard valve train noise so loud to where it caught my attention to where I needed to go figure out what was going on. But just because that's my experience doesn't mean that's something you're not facing, whether or not it's in your A20 or your D series or your B series. I know recently my D series, I had an issue going on with that, and I finally fixed that one, thankfully. And so yeah, very rare occasions, and it does happen, does the valve actually put more wear on the seat itself, which would give it more of a tighter clearance. So more common to find looser clearances amongst Honda engines than tighter, but tighter clearances on Honda engines after a long periods of time. Don't be shocked if you actually run into that as well. You may never know, maybe just be a weird thing of the engine over time if you are a one owner of that vehicle, or you may not have known the previous people who've ever worked on it and may done the valve adjustments on it wrong. So keep all that stuff in mind. Another reason is if you're upgrading cams. Now usually good reputable camshaft manufacturers out there, when they send you a cam, they should give you like notes pretty much that tells you exactly how you should adjust the intake and exhaust valves for that cam. If for whatever reason they did not send you that, make sure to contact them to get those specifications. Now they're usually not too far off from what OEM calls within their certain specs, but still it never hurts to call them just to get it, because at least if you throw that big cam in there and you just leave it at recommended OEM factory, clearance, and that cam messes something up, then you're kind of out of luck because you didn't follow exactly what they said. I mean, then again, I don't know how warranties would work that way, but just be sure to contact them, especially if you guys are buying third party. Like if you're buying like a used cam, for example, like ask the owner exactly what cam it is. I mean, it's usually like most cams to my knowledge they really aren't marked, so make sure like if whatever they're selling you, like you have exactly what you're getting from them, and then ask them specs. If they don't know what intake or exhaust specs they have set, or they don't even know how to send you the right way to find them, then in my personal opinion, walk away, don't get it unless you know the guy personally and he's cool enough, but he just doesn't, have the time or the knowledge of that, of that specific camshaft at that time. Then, at least try to guarantee exactly what it is, what the spec is, and then contact the right manufacturer to get the specs for that. Now, before I start tinkering into this. I'm going to close it out with so looser clearances. As I said before, how you can tell you have way too loose of valves is pretty much the engine bay is going to be noisier, more ticking, louder. Like you'll definitely, if you've been driving the car for a long time, day to day, and you start noticing a tick, and it's something you definitely have not noticed before or paid attention to, then add that to the list of possibilities of what that noise could be. Number two, it can lead to just pretty much poor idling, poor performance out of your vehicle. I mean, you may notice some certain power loss in the power band somewhere. Basically, if you notice your ride is driving like crap in comparison to how it was like a couple weeks ago or a day ago, I mean, usually it's gonna be kind of gradual. I mean, unless something super crazy happens and the clearance went totally left field, or then you have more problems than you probably have in just adjusting your valves. But anyway, that's what commonality you're looking for. Now, when it comes to adjusting your valves, it's a little bit more safer being on the looser side than it is being on the Titan side. Now, Titan side, this is what you should experience is you should experience less valve train noise, which for most of you guys is like, oh, cool, I don't want to hear any more weird ticking noises coming from my engine bay. Well, that could, if you have it too tight, you could lead to burning your valves, which is not a good thing, and that's something that's just going to happen, and you're not really going to know until you pull the whole cylinder head off to discover it yourself. So there is that fine line in between where, if you can't hear it, but you're in spec, then you should be good to go. Keyword should. So step one is going to be the removal of this valve cover, or rocker panel, or rocker cover, however you guys want to call it. And just 3 10mm nuts right here. And something to consider, if your valve cover gasket is leaking and you're planning on replacing that gasket, while the cover is off, guys, just get a feeler gauge and just check your clearances. You're already there, you might as well check your valve lash. Just, if it's good, you don't have to worry about anything, put the gasket in, throw it on. If not, take the extra time to adjust your valves, and once that's set, then finish off your valve cover gasket job and good to go. Okay, valve cover is off. The next thing you want to do is, well, you don't have to jack the vehicle up for this. Turn your wheels sharp left, and you can't see nothing under here, but okay, there you go. So you want to turn that crank pulley counterclockwise. It's going to be 17mm, because you want to turn cam top dead center. So I've talked about how to do this top dead center many times, so you guys just go watch my videos. The new cam gear video, I explain it a lot more in depth. I talk about it as well in my head gasket job as well. Head gasket video. So I know this looks a lot different than the one you're looking at, but pretty much when it says up, facing up, the 2 dotted tabs on your OEM ones lined up with where the valve cover meets the cylinder head right here, okay? Top dead center. Okay, she's at top dead center, kinda, but it'll work. So I know for a fact that this does work, same principle with D16s. I'm not too sure about B series and the rest, but I'm pretty sure it's the same thing. So when it's at top dead center, when the marker up symbol, whatever, is at 12 o'clock, you will be able to check your valve lash, your valve clearance on both the exhaust and intake side. Just get a good view of that. Intake, exhaust manifold, header, exhaust side. Okay, you will be able to check the clearances with a feeler gauge or whatever tool you're going to check with on cylinder number 1. Now when you rotate this counterclockwise to 9 o'clock, you are going to be able to check clearances for cylinder 3, exhaust, both intake sides. Not 2, 3. When you rotate this counterclockwise again to 6 o'clock, you'll be able to check clearances for cylinder 4. And then when you rotate this counterclockwise again to the marker at 3 o'clock, you will be able to check cylinder 2. Now basically how you know that, so right now it's at top dead center, it's at 12 o'clock. I'm going to check the exhaust side. I'll go through what clearances should be. You will be able to slip in feeler gauges. Oh, we got 2 there. You don't want to. Sorry guys. Alright. Focus. Okay, you'll be able to slip them through on the exhaust side. Sorry about that. As well as intake side. Now, if you tried to slip any of these in, no matter what size, to any of the rest of them, while it's at 12 o'clock, it will not work. Okay, so according to the Accord Master Manual, for intake side, you want to adjust it between 5 thousandths to 7 thousandths on a feeler gauge. 7 thousandths being the loosest, 5 thousandths being the tightest clearance. Okay, whatever you choose within all of these is up to you and depending on your setup and how the car reacts after you adjusted them. Now going to the exhaust side, exhaust is going to be anywhere from 10 thousandths to 12 thousandths. Okay, again, 10 thousandths being the tightest clearance, 12 thousandths being the loosest. Okay, being on the looser side is always a little bit safer, but you may have excess noise, which may after a while work itself out after a couple of heat cycles. As that keyword says may. Said anything tighter than 10 thousandths, you risk burning a valve. Anything looser than this may get a louder valve noise, as well as more faster wear on the valve train itself. And that goes for anything for both of these. Remember, as I said earlier on, be sure to check OEM specifications for whatever engine you're doing this on, as well as if you're going to be throwing in an aftermarket cam, go by that manufacturer's recommendations. Okay, so a quick thing that I forgot to mention, or that I briefly mentioned. When you guys adjust the valves on your car, make sure you do it when the engine is cold. A good time to do it would be the first thing in the morning, or right before, if you haven't started your car up all day. Do it first and then start it up and then drive about it and go about your day. Then you can see exactly how any change in performance or issues that you were having with have changed or not. Second thing is, if you guys are having any problems or having difficulties turning the crank to get it to top dead center to all the different positions to be able to change and adjust all the valve lash for each cylinder. Another thing to consider is an extra step, but it does make it easier. Take out all the spark plugs from the head, just so when all that compression just goes out those holes and you won't have any issues rotating it. So just a quick tip, and there's that. Okay, so I actually already recorded this, but somehow accidentally deleted like 8 minutes worth of footage, so let's try this again. I actually already went through cylinders 1 and 2, or sorry, 1 and 3. I'm about to do 4. Actually, for the record, I already pre-checked it, but I haven't made any adjustments to it, so I'll still show you that process. So I'm going to start off with the exhaust valve. Now, the way I'm going to be doing everything, I'm going to do it on the exhaust valve, is going to be the same exact thing you're going to be doing to the 2 intake valves. So for the exhaust, the adjustments are anywhere between 10 thousandths and 12 thousandths. So let's see, 10 thousandths being the tightest clearance and 12 thousandths being the loosest. Now, rule of thumb is these should be getting looser as time goes on. So I'll start with 12. Okay, now just like cylinder 1, surprisingly, let's see, things at 11, no, 10. So it technically is within spec. It's at the tightest clearance. So here's a cool thing. Cylinder 1 exhaust valve actually was at like 8 thousandths. So it was one of the rare occasions where it actually got tighter as time went on. Now it's like, as long as I've owned this car, I've never done any valve adjustments whatsoever on this. As like the last owner, I'm not sure if they did it or whatnot and when they did it. So believe it or not, all the intake sides so far from cylinder 1, 3, and 4 are all within spec. They're all either 7 thousandths or 6 thousandths, which kind of makes sense because 7 thousandths is the loosest setting that the manual calls for. So I'm actually not going to be making any adjustments to the intake side. You guys can if you want to get everything all maxed up just to make yourselves feel comfortable, but that should be fine. So for example, I'll still show you guys how to do it. So as I said, so for the intake side, what the manual calls for, what the master manual calls for is you have anywhere between 5 thousandths and 7 thousandths. 5 thousandths being the tightest clearance, 7 thousandths being the loosest you guys could have that's tolerable. So let's see. So same thing like I just showed you on the exhaust side. Just stick your feeler gauge underneath. So 7 thousandths fits good. Okay. 7 thousandths does not fit under the second one, so I will go with not that. Let's see, oh, I lost it here. Okay, try 6 thousandths. 6 thousandths, perfect. That's good. As I said, I never had any valve noise or any problems with this vehicle running except for the tune that's on, which is a B18 A1 or B1 LS B18 tune right now, which is not what it's supposed to be on. This car does need to get tuned, but I digress. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to adjust this. So you guys can use your open end and screwdriver. I mean, you definitely need an open end, but just to break it loose, I'm going to use socket and ratchet wherever I put it. Oh, there it is. Had to do it with all the other ones. Well, for cylinder 1, I didn't do any adjustments on cylinder 3. Everything was good. Okay. So. Okay. I don't think these were loosened. So, okay. So if you guys can see, if I turn this left, that slit right here, I can move along with it sometimes, or I can move it with my fingers. So it doesn't need to, you don't need to take this all the way off. So now what I'm gonna do is, see, it was set at, I believe it was at 11. And I set all the exhaust to 12, which is the loosest clearance, since for whatever reason the exhaust side of this has all been tight, or at least at the tightest clearance, so I'm a little bit looser. But here, I'll show you how I'm gonna go about this. You guys do not have to go about it the way I'm going about it, but I mean, other than how to adjust them, there's only kind of like one way to do it. So obviously, lefty, loosening, looser clearance, righty, tighter clearance. And do not put weight on it when you do it. It could affect whether or not how much drag you have on the feeler gauge itself. So just make your adjustments and then back off. Okay, so 12. Okay, super loose. Very slight turns can make such a very big difference. So what I want to do is, now you guys don't have to do this, this is just me. So some people like very minimal drag. Some people like about a medium size of drag. And then some people, depending on what they're doing, like a lot of drag. Now since I'm going to be going at the loosest clearance recommended from spec, I want to have a lot of drag, but that's just me. You guys don't have to do this. Alright, that's good enough for me. And you guys, if you want to, you guys can throw a coat of oil on your feeler gauge or WD-40 or whatever, it doesn't hurt it. You guys can do it dry as well. So that's where I want it. Now here comes the tricky part. Get your open end. Now, the tricky part is you want to tighten this without turning the adjuster, because it will go with it when you tighten it. Okay, if I remember correctly, I believe that nut's going to be 14 foot-pounds. I'll leave links in the description below where you guys can download the Accord Master Manual, the 86 or 89 Accord Master Manual, which gives all the torque specs and goodies and whatnot. Okay, so I set it at 12 thousandths. So we'll test it one more time. And that is good. And you do the same thing for the intake side. If any of that is off from the specs that I gave off. And then, as I said earlier, now that cylinder 4 is done, this is currently facing the up position, or the top dead center dot is facing 6 o'clock right now. So when I turn this another quarter, it's going to be at 3 o'clock. Then I'll be able to adjust cylinder 2. And then when I turn it one more time to where it's at top dead center, where the up facing is at 12 o'clock, I will be back at cylinder 1. And that's about it, guys. I'm not gonna do it all because I mean it's pretty much just gonna be time consuming. You guys, hopefully you guys will understand what to do. So whatever I just did on this is gonna be the same exact thing on intake and exhaust side, given the specs that I've given. So there's that. If you have any questions, ask in the comments below. And I'll leave the links in the description as well to different articles in regards to valve lash adjustment. And that's that. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.